Hey guys, I am here with Shawn McCombs.
That's me.
Shawn was a former student with us with Ratio Christi and has since moved on, graduated from Colorado State, and has been highly involved at our church. And I think I'm just going to start probably bringing him on board to help with the podcast and maybe doing some of the YouTube videos as well. He's a very flavorful guy.
This is the first time I've heard about this. On camera. This was not scripted. He just told me this just now. I'm very excited.
Yeah. So
This is news.
I see that a lot of podcasts I think do a lot better when they have more than just one person in front of the mic and camera.
Yeah, there's a little bit of bounce back option. There's a
Right.
give and a take, there's a play, and for some reason I think people are more comfortable with the ebb and flow of a conversation than the monologue.
Exactly. Yeah. And so when I was trying to think of different people that I thought would be really good to bring on board for that, Shawn was one of the first guys because he's loud.
Yeah, I'm loud. I could easily... Once I shattered a window in a different state with just the use of my lungs. Yeah, it was incredible. People were shocked. You may remember me. You probably don't.
Yeah, you'll have to learn how to filter everything that Shawn says as well.
Yeah, take everything with a table salt shaker's worth of salt. That's what I always say.
Yeah. So, anyways, what I thought would be cool for this first video, having Shawn or podcast, however you're watching this, having Shawn on with us, was just to have him share his story. Apologetics is obviously a huge part of this channel, part of the ministry that I do with Ratio Christi. And so I wanted him to be able to kind of share how that's been an impact in his life and really even probably start with just how you came to the Lord.
Yeah, that is such an interesting story. I'm going to try to condense it to make it easier. And so, people will probably want further detail at some point, but there's always that option. I had previously, I think to set the stage, it's kind of good to know where I came from. It's hard to see the transition if you don't know where you came from, or where the story you're listening to came from. So I was really into the dance world. I was specifically pursuing ballet, and I moved out to Colorado to pursue a degree at Colorado State University through their dance program in ballet pedagogy, which is just a really fancy way to say teaching ballet. It's like really unnecessary, honestly.
Those are big words.
Yeah, it's very unnecessary, like I said.
We ain't but humble pirates.
Yeah, all we have is pirate jargon. So I come
Ballet,
out...
pirates.
Yeah.
Same thing, really.
Well, I mean, swashbuckling is one of my base skills.
Okay.
Yeah, it's actually a hidden talent of mine. So I'm pursuing this career in dance, and I encountered a girl who asked me, and the only girl in my program who really was a Christian, and she asked me, did I believe in God? And that was a difficult question for me to answer at that point, because I was definitely, I would say, oh my gosh, the word's escaping me. It's not atheistic, it's the next step down, which is a weird way to say that, but...
Oh, wow, I'm blanking out on the words too.
That's hilarious. Agnostic, that's the one.
Yep.
That's the word we're looking for. I would quantify myself or would have quantified myself as an agnostic. So I believe there was a higher power, but I didn't necessarily know what that was shaped to look like. And I grew up in the Christian church, specifically the Lutheran church, for those of you who are like really specific. And then I walked away when I was 18, and so I had knowledge of God, I had knowledge of the concept, and I didn't think that Christianity necessarily was the answer. And so I told her, yes, I believed in God, but I didn't necessarily know what that looked like. And over the course of like 3 months, she like really questioned me and was like, hey, why don't you believe? And we'd have these great conversations in a really natural, honestly, way. And one day she just told me, she was like, Shawn, you need to meet my friend Jonathan. And I've always been an extroverted guy, but I have really terrible people skills, so it's really interesting to mix the two.
We've been working on it.
Yeah, it's like awful people skills, but love to be around them, which is like that guy who's really bad at golf, but insists on going golfing every time. And you're like, dude, we only get 4 slots. And he's like, but this is the time. And you're like, you've never improved.
Yeah, personal space was something that we worked on.
Oh, yeah, personal
Shawn liked
space.
to talk with people as closely as possible.
Like, actually, like, this close, but in a normal setting, like, not where we're shoved into the internet. Like,
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Face to face, like, hey,
yeah,
how are you?
I'm your friend now.
Oh,
You can tell what I had for lunch today.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was a thing. And then, basically, I met Jonathan. And he got me, he started asking the same question that Mary was asking, but on the next level. You guys know where this is going, probably. He was like, do you believe in God? And I was like, yeah, kinda. And he's like, well, why not? Which is, after why, the why not is next. Like, the first is, why do you believe what you believe? Great. Now, why don't you believe what I believe? And it's like, so here we're level 2. But
and what's cool a little bit about this story too is Jonathan, which you'll get to.
Yeah.
Jonathan ended up being, when we first started the chapter of Ratio Christi at Colorado State. Mm-hmm. Jonathan was the president of Ratio Christi, and so just the ways that those all started.
Yeah, and that is weirdly too, because the presidency eventually shifted from Jonathan back into me, which then got shifted into Robbie, who was someone who we took into the fold as well.
Right. Yeah.
And I think Robbie's story matches a little bit different than mine.
Yeah.
But at the same time,
have him on one of these days.
Yeah, I feel like it'd just be interesting to see the presidency.
Right.
Maybe we need to get like a poster. We need to get professional photos done. Okay.
And have those like displayed somehow.
Yeah, we're tangenting. We're tangenting. Yeah. We'll put them in the streaming room, and that'll be our Ratio Christi legacy.
Yeah.
This has gone off in a weird direction. Anyway, so I meet Jonathan, and he basically really starts to make me question why I believe what I believe in a kind, polite way. Once again, that's like such a key in my story is the demeanor in which people discussed with me. Like the demeanor of these conversations was respectful, was non-intrusive, was inclusive instead of exclusive, which are all concepts that maybe you guys know and maybe you don't, but we will talk about them in the future.
Right. Yeah, it's some of my videos and some of my blogs, if you check them out, talk a little bit about what's called the Columbo tactic, and I think that's a lot of what people ended up kind of using, talking with Shawn, was just kind of uncovering what you believed, asking some questions of like, what do you believe? Why do you believe it? What are your reasons that you reject this? Have you thought about this?
Well, totally. And that's what's nice about that is it sets the tone for a conversation that, hey, I want to know you, instead of, hey, I specifically want to attack your beliefs.
Right.
It changes the dynamic from friend and foe to like two friends having a discussion.
Who knew that like people attacking your beliefs doesn't usually help you change your mind?
Yeah, it's weird how like ultimatums maybe don't set the grounding for a great conversation. Right. You're either with or against us. That sounds really not inclusive.
Right.
Like, oh, I really want to talk to you, person who obviously already hates me.
Yeah. Now I really want to hear what you have to say now that you've like ripped me apart.
Yeah, I'm positive you're going to give me a good feeling after this conversation's done. Yeah. You're really going to brighten up my 11 a.m.
Right. Like, yes. Which it is 11 a.m. as we're recording.
I didn't even think about that.
Around that.
That's fine.
We're not super morning people.
We really aren't the morning people. This will be a night show eventually.
Yeah. But we wanted to just get the show on the road.
So. The nice thing about the podcast is they don't know we have a beer in hand. They can't see it right.
That's true.
Just
if we have a beer.
24 ounces. I don't.
Anyhow. So yeah, continue your story.
Yeah, so I meet Jonathan, and we basically get into deeper and a deeper conversation, and eventually he says, hey Shawn, I think you should meet my friend Noah. Keep in mind, this is in like a 5-hour window. Like I meet Jonathan, and like that night we're in like the nitty gritty of theology. It wasn't like over the course of a month and the following days, like their friendship developed. There was no storyline here, like no plot twist. This was straight up like we had a conversation and we both had the respectful demeanor and we took it to a deep level, which felt pretty incredible. And we did it in a respectful way. And basically he was like, hey, we should have more of these talks. And I was like, yeah, I don't hate you. Like, that's an easy way to go about this.
Yeah.
And so we did. And then he brought me to Ratio Christi. He was like, I have this venue where we can have these conversations.
Right.
Like, in a group. How do you feel about that? And not everyone's going to have the same fuzzies that I had with this, but I had experience talking about difficult subjects in a group setting. So I was like, sure, I'm comfortable with this. This doesn't bother me. I don't feel pressured here. And when I got there, once again, at Ratio Christi, everyone just made me feel welcomed and wanted to know more about me and more about who I was. And then they wanted to know about what formulated me, which was my beliefs, my morals, and my opinions.
Yeah. Definitely.
So I felt welcomed. I get brought into the fold, kind of. And I went for quite a few weeks, honestly.
You did.
Like, it was like, for someone, it is very odd for a non-Christian to go to a predominantly Christian setting.
Right. And
stick with it. But I chose to because I liked the environment. And after, I think it was like 2 months, 3 months.
Yeah.
Because I got,
on that.
I remember meeting Jonathan probably like October. And then I would say like over the course of 2 months probably of attending every single week. And then I think we even met one-on-one multiple times.
A couple times, for sure.
I just asked like every hard question that you guys probably think of. Like, I went through all of them at a ridiculous speed. All the big ones, you know, problem of evil. Like, why does God let bad things happen to good people? Big issue with that. Definitely went through the gender issue and the homosexuality issue. Was like, how do you guys navigate this?
Right.
And so got into the thick of that. Feminism, we went there. Remember those talks. Also creation and history and hermeneutics. So I really I dived in.
Right.
And people don't. What's funny is, you guys, probably a lot of you guys hearing this are like, I don't know what any of that means, Shawn. And that sounds really nerdy. But what's interesting is, those were all the apologetics terms for questions that you are asking. Or you know someone who's asked. Or don't even know you're asking because you don't know what your true question is.
Right.
And like, these are questions that active Christians ask or don't have answers to. And so I searched for those answers. And I would say I got pretty well versed across the board. I definitely have like a universalist apologetics background.
I think that what was really interesting to me about it was, as someone, because you really joined in to our chapter when we were really just getting started.
Yeah, it was very young.
It was very young. I almost want to say, no, I guess I'm getting you and John mixed up.
John was we joined at the same time. John,
did you show up at Jonathan's house the first? Because we had one meeting at Jonathan's house.
No,
I was interest meeting even.
Yeah, and that was the one that happened in August. And I came in at I want to say the end of September, first week of October.
Okay.
But to give you guys background, because Ratio Christi is a college-focused organization, it runs off the school year. So to give you guys background on the dates, it's because it lines up with the fall semester of college for most students.
Yeah.
So that's, and I'm trying to remember exactly because the dates matter, because I had what we would call I guess a full conversion, which is a term. I realize that terminology is so hot because people were like, conversion. Oh, it was not like brainwashing, but I really went from agnostic to a full-fledged church, not only going to church every Sunday, but being a part of the church, actively serving in the church. And a 3 month span. It was very short. That turnover is not normal in people's lives. It's normally in multiple years that people will change anything about their beliefs or morals.
Right. Yeah, and I think just a cool thing about having you join in, even early on, like you were halfway through the semester when you joined or so.
Yeah.
But like in that was, as we're starting this chapter, so much of my hope had been, I don't want this just to be a ministry that like all the Christians show up to and they ask their questions that they're struggling with and they're doubting. But like I wanted people who were truly seeking and wondering, and oftentimes like the Christians that come sometimes can be like, I do have questions, I'm wondering about this, but they have this fear of like, if I ask this question, then like I'm showing that I don't have good faith,
right? Yeah,
or something like that.
It's
so
a
they hold back.
It's weird. It's like a spiritual self-esteem is what I call it.
Oh yeah, no, I think that's a great way of putting it. And so because of that, so many times where they're like, I do really wonder about this, they're afraid to ask it, and here's Shawn in the middle of when we're going through, because basically our chapter, the way we function is we go through what I consider kind of the very basics of apologetics over the spring semester or fall semester, and then we get in depth to other subjects and other things that the students are specifically interested in, and some of those other like random topics like abortion, homosexuality, different religions,
the really difficult ones.
But so with that, like even with the intro, so the intro, basically we get through how we know truth exists, how we know God exists, how we know Scripture is the Word of God, and how we know Jesus is God. And there's all sorts of questions that people have as we work through that. Yeah. But like I said, usually people are afraid to ask. But here's Shawn, and he is like, I don't quite get that. I have a question about this, or I have a question about that. And like you could see so many of the times when Shawn asked those questions, the Christians in the group even kind of being like, I wanted to ask that.
Yeah.
But I wasn't willing to do it.
I don't know why. I feel like sometimes people are afraid to ask questions about the fundamentals, but I don't know how you can understand upper division material, and in this realm, in apologetics, this would be, I don't think you can understand the solution to the problem of evil. I don't think you can understand the Christian view on abortion or any of these hot topics if you do not have the base theology down.
Right.
Like you simply, if you do not have your terms defined for a discussion, you cannot have a discussion.
Right.
That's the problem, is so many people don't set the foundation.
Right.
They don't. So it's not like when we have a talk, we know that we're both talking about an omnipotent, omniscient, holy, good God. That is our pretense for what God looks like. Yeah. And sometimes people they have two different views of who God even is.
Right.
And so, of course, logically, their answer makes sense given the image of God that they have. And the Christian answer makes sense given the image of God that we have. Right. But because they're in contrast, it's a constant miscommunication between the two parties. Mm-hmm. And too many people forget to break down the base topics and to set limiting factors.
Right.
Like, we're not going to let the conversation go in this direction. So basically people will get caught in the tangent stream where they go, oh, well, what about this? What if? The completely irrelevant blank. And you're like, okay, we're not going to get into what ifs. We're going to be involved in facts. And people, because we don't set these base guidelines.
A hypothetical isn't necessarily an objection. So many times people are like, well, I could give you this that could explain it. But if you don't have evidence for like that actually being a legitimate possibility for whatever you're talking about, like why would we even dialogue?
Well, and that's the problem, is that so many people don't even know about, I think, the rules of discussion.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like people don't know how to have discourse now. And so really laying out the foundation of, hey, let's have a respectful conversation about this. Right. This is what we're going to discuss. This is what we're not going to discuss. And we're going to be using facts. If you don't have facts, that's fine. If you feel uncomfortable, also fine. this conversation can stop when you feel it needs to stop. There's so many things I learned in Ratio Christi outside of just hyper high level theology. It was like I learned how to have a conversation. I learned how to set guidelines and boundaries, and also to do my research. Oh man. So I basically, to finish up this my story, is I get into Ratio Christi basically 2 or 3 months go by. I ask every question in the book, and then I get baptized at a local church, not Noah's church, but funny enough,
still an acceptable church.
Still an acceptable church, belief wise, which is a whole day. We can have a whole video on that topic alone.
Yeah.
Just what is the necessary dogma to believe in, because there's just too many people who think that everything's negotiable. Right. Feelings are truth.
Right.
That's my favorite line.
Right.
Feelings are truth. Okay.
Which is why you gotta start. That's why we always start with like, how do you know truth exists, or do we know truth exists, and then how do we evaluate that? That's always that foundation we got to start with, because we can even get down the road of like, I've shown you really good evidence for everything that we've talked about, and then someone's just like, well, I just don't feel like it's right. And
you're like, okay, cool, so you just don't feel like 2,000 years of history is
you got to start there. I mean, I think the thing that I always talk about is like, sometimes when I have conversations with people, I'm trying to point them to, all right, I want to ask the questions like a lot of people were asking you,
right,
to figure out where you are kind of in that, like, does truth exist? Does God exist? Is the scripture the word of God? Is Jesus God? And then wherever they're at, I want to start there, even if they're asking questions to those higher points.
Yeah.
Because if I could give them great evidence for Jesus being God, and then they're still like, but I just don't feel like it's true. And I'm like, we should have started there to show them, like, whether you feel it's true or not doesn't mean it's not true. Like,
well, and that's I think we could honestly even get into that topic a little bit today, just because basically this is the end of my testimony for you guys, and like I'm gonna really focus on helping with jargon for those of you who don't necessarily or are not Christian or not aware of what Christian lingo is. So testimony is just a fancy word, once again, for life story or process of coming to faith. That's a really easy way to put it. And so basically it ended up, I got baptized at a church, and then my life I turned my entire life around. I broke up with my girlfriend because of my beliefs, and realizing also that it was just a really emotionally unhealthy relationship. But it was crazy because with my newfound faith, I changed my standards, which also changed how I treated people. So I was treating her a lot better. So even when we broke things off, we were on decent terms. And then eventually, I moved in with the couple who had really been big factors in my life, to getting me baptized. And then once I moved in with them, lived with them for a year, and then I traded churches to Noah's church. And crazy part about that whole thing, I don't even know if you know this, my ex-girlfriend messaged me 2 months ago, and she found a church and has come to Christ.
Whoa.
Yeah,
that's
which
awesome.
is crazy, because if you guys like knew the story of that relationship and knew who she was, that's like a 180 turnaround.
Yeah.
That's like
that's huge.
That's like those stories you hear where you're like, yeah, I was like, wow, that's gonna make my ex-girlfriend sound like a biker, but she's not. But she was. She was into just unhealthy things. She had unhealthy lifestyles, and she was emotionally unstable. And coming to faith for her has given her a community and emotional stability, which is like two of the things that every successful person will say you need. Yep. Like, period. That's not Christianity. That's period. If you want to be successful, you have to have community. Whether you're an introvert or extrovert, you have to have community. And you have to be emotionally stable. If you're not emotionally stable, you can't maintain an intimate relationship, and you can't maintain close relationships. So really, if you're not emotionally stable, it's hard to have community. And without community, once again, you can't be successful.
Right.
But that's, once again, topic for a different video.
Right.
We have so much material to cover.
Oh, yeah.
But that's the nice thing is we have as many podcasts as people will listen to us.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So we got I'm trying to make these about 30 minutes. And so,
yeah, we're doing good.
We got about 5 minutes. I'd be interested to know, obviously, you covered so many different things. We talked about so many things. You and Jonathan, you and just Ratio Christie, you and myself. What were some of the big ones that you're that when we went through that and someone brought out this point, that really was a game changer?
It's the problem of evil.
Yeah.
It's the problem of evil for everyone. I don't care who you are. The problem of evil, and to once again reiterate what that is, why does God let bad things happen to good people, or why do bad people get farther than good people do?
Right.
Once I understood that was the linchpin.
Right.
I feel like it is for everyone. It's just phrased in a different way.
Right.
Maybe for you it looks like, why did God let my grandpa die at 60?
Right.
Or why
it's so personal. I think that's a huge part of why.
No, because it gets right into why. Basically, the question is, why did I have to suffer? Mm-hmm. Why am I suffering? Right. Why am I in pain? How can a good God let me be in pain if he's all good? And I'm like, once I had the answer to that, I was like, okay, this makes sense. And then I started even questioning my own life, this makes more sense. This logic makes more sense than the logic in my life.
Yeah.
What do I need to be changing? And then we get into introspection.
So, how would you... We got 3 minutes.
Yeah.
With that issue, how would you explain it in that? And this is one of those topics that
we need a whole video or two.
Probably video series really to talk about the problem of evil. It's been something that really... the book of Job is really dealing with this exact thing.
Yeah, the book of Job deals with it, but without the hermeneutic explanation of Job and the apologetic backing to it, it just sounds like God letting someone suffer. You have to know the biblical context for it to
but what's interesting is just to realize, when you do know those things, you know that background, you realize that's what Job is talking about is dealing with the problem of evil.
It's specifically.
And it was a lot of people would actually say that Job may have actually been the first book written in all of the Bible.
Right.
And so this isn't a lot of times atheists might bring this up and be like, well, have you thought about the problem of evil? Yes.
We've never broached it.
Right.
We've just entirely glazed over it.
Christians have been discussing and getting into this since the beginning of Christianity. Judaism, as really the faith that Christianity came out of, has been talking about it since its origin. It's not something that's super new. But
so the nutshell of the problem of evil is basically, I'm going to hit so many topics in a short time, and we're going to break this down in the future. So just get ready, buckle up. Because we have a loving God, initially in creation, he created Adam and Eve, and he gave them free will. For it to be qualified as free will, Adam and Eve had to have options. If they had no option to do wrong, there would be no right. Without darkness, there is no light, because everything is light, so there's no need for a name for it. Similarly, without wrong, there is no right, because everything is right. And it's not loving to control someone. That's called manipulation.
Right.
So
making robots, you're not making people.
You're making robots, you're not making people. So effectively, God gave us the option gave them the option to choose whether or not they wanted to follow him. And they did the one thing he told them not to do, and effectively brought sin, they actively chose sin. Yeah. And so God, because he had given them free will, and he loved and respected their decisions, you're right, he could have some people would say he could have just corrected the issue right there, but once again, that's controlling. Right. Not letting... So their choices had to have consequences, and so they chose sin, and so the consequence of that choice was to bring sin not only into humans and humanity, but onto the world as well.
Right.
And so effectively, a lot Then you have the division of natural sin, which is sin that happens because of Earth or things on Earth, like hurricanes, like plagues, like natural disasters. And then you have what we would call moral sin, which is that is the sin that, or the suffering that humans cause towards each other by decisions that we make. And so sometimes, to make this a little real, sometimes moral sin will look like, well, I'm an armed robber and I want this money, so I'm going to murder everyone in this bank. And because of that, you lost your wife in an armed robbery shooting. And that was my choice, and because it was my choice and God loves everyone, he could not interfere with my decision, because interfering, once again, is not love, because love is freedom.
Right. And
we have the freedom of choice. And then it gets so much deeper than that.
Right.
But basically the solution to the problem of evil is that we chose evil. And so when we choose evil, God allows that choice. Also, natural evil is in the world, and we chose to be susceptible to that. That was part of the contract. If you choose this, you're going to suffer.
Right.
And it's like, okay, so we are suffering. And in a later video, we can get into, well, how does two people's decisions affect all of humanity?
Right.
And we can talk about the weight of that and the gravity of that. But there is an explanation to that too.
Right. What's like one other topic that you would say also kind of hit you?
That's the problem of evil was the big linchpin for me. I would say the historical evidence.
Okay.
Something about, like, a lot of people don't realize how much actual historical evidence Christianity has. And it's not like a little bit. Like, we've got a lot. Like, substantially more. I'd say like 5 to 30 times more than other religions, depending on, like, which it is.
Yeah.
And that's... it matters. Like, if you want to say something's not true, and then you deny all the validity of all the historical evidence that it provides, you're denying history. So then you deny all historical evidence ever, which denies all knowledge that we have, because knowledge is based on history.
Yeah.
Like, knowledge is the culmination of thousands or hundreds of years of human effort combined. Right. So that was another one. The historical evidence was big for me. Abortion was a big topic for me too. Understanding the intricacies of the abortion topic, as a male especially, like, and understanding, like, okay, so this is why I'm allowed to have an opinion, or this is why, like, why it doesn't matter what your gender is. Like, there's some intrinsic things that we can agree on. Gender removed, people removed, even just conceptually, morally. So understanding the morals was a big thing for me.
Definitely. Awesome. Well, now you guys know Shawn, and
that's me.
He's probably going to be joining us now for the podcast pretty regularly. I might throw him in some of the videos here and there as well. Just thought it'd be a way to make this a little bit more interesting than just having me monologuing the whole time. Yeah. So I think we play off each other well, so this will be fun.
Maybe we should just start progressively growing our beards longer.
Right. So that, so like, you can just see the progression over
the podcast. Just like a year from now, we have like these wizard beards.
Right. I mean, that was a funny thing when I recently shaved mine after my winter beard. Yeah. From some of my earlier videos. So.
Do you think if my beard grows long enough, I'll be able to cast magical spells?
It's not how it works.
Okay.
Sorry, bro.
Okay. Well, we tried.
Yeah. And we're going to finish on that.
Yeah.
See you guys next time.
Yeah, see you guys next time.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the content. If you did, please give it a like and a subscribe. Also think about supporting this ministry financially. Your support allows me to create more content in the future that's hopefully more of a resource to others and to yourself. If you want to do that, there's a link in the description that will take you to my Ratio Christie page, and you can set up a donation there. Thanks a lot.